Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Larry Hagner, the founder of the Dad Edge podcast and movement. A lot of you already know who Larry is. He founded his platform, the Dad Edge. I think it started out as the Dad Project, but in 2015, he got this calling. He felt this passion, this conviction to really equip himself by learning from other dads, equipping himself in fatherhood, and then in turn equipping other men behind him that follow him, that even preceded him. He's got such a huge following, guys. He's got 30 million downloads of his podcast. He's got 200,000 social media followers. There's 50 men in his exclusive business boardroom mastermind, and then another 800 men in the Dad Edge Alliance. He's been married for 20 years. He's got 4 sons. As he puts it, it's kind of like a fraternity house in his house. And I have 4 children as well. I know exactly what organized chaos looks and sounds like. It's an honor to have him back. He's been on the podcast. He's an author. He wrote a book called The Dad Edge, and actually I believe is about to release another book coming up, and that's not really a spoiler alert because I think we discussed it the last time he was on, and he had some snags in the road with his former publisher, but he is back on track with that initiative, back on track with that book, and it's going to be coming out soon. Can't wait to get my hands on a copy of that. So guys, you know Larry Hagner, you know the Dad Edge, you know what value he brings, you know how he's equipping guys. He's got so many resources on his website too. He's got a training on there. He's got marriage training. He's got 25 questions that you can instantly connect with your spouse. He's got a resource for creating more patience. Again, like I said, the book that he has, and in addition to just his amazing content on the podcast. So gentlemen, without further ado, help me welcome Larry Hagner to Last in Line podcast. Larry Hagner, thank you for not running the other direction when we invited you back to Last in Line podcast. How are you doing?
Are you kidding? I don't want to be last in line. I don't want to be running. I want to be first in line when it comes to Last in Line podcast. We go. That's a lot of lines in there.
I see what you did. I see what you did. Well, we are, you would not make a very good Marine because apparently the highest decorated officer eats last in the chow line in the Marine Corps. So my dad was a Marine, but that had nothing to do with the name of this podcast, ironically enough. So it's kind of cool, though, that they do that. I didn't know that. So you and I'd be at the front, I guess, of the line.
Plus, I like food.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. That one's tough. But
yeah, I might be able to take over a few Marines for the right chow line. Maybe.
There you go.
Maybe not. All right. Well, man, I appreciate it. You got a lot going on. You got a big event coming up that maybe we'll talk about later. You got a book coming out sometime soon. We're going to get our hands on that. And so I'm going to try not to be just a canned Larry Hagner interviewer guy. I'm going to ask you a few weird questions, a few off the beaten path questions, but I've heard you talk about before, and I've never got to mention this to you, but I wanted to today. You were in device sales first, medical device. So that's what I've been in for not device specifically, but I was in device, but for 16 years been in medical, and I was doing device, heart, cardiac monitor stuff. But I knew when you said that, I was like, oh, dude, we've been in the medical space together. So were you doing the Dad Edge while you were doing device, or did you just kind of hang it up and say, I'm all in with the Dad Edge back when you started in 2015?
No, I was doing both. To be honest, like when I first started Dad Edge, like the podcast, like I think things that like really sort of, I guess, launched. I mean, I started the blog in 2013. Okay. And then I started the podcast in 2015, and I never meant for it at all to become a business, an organization, a community. It was literally just a podcast. It was something therapeutically for me as a hobby, as an outlet. And I was absolutely doing both. I was working, putting in my hours, and I was I was doing that in my spare time. Interesting thing is that I was obviously more busy, doing dad edge and medical device, but I was somehow, some way, a way better performer. I have some theories around that. Like, as far as like, I mean, like the last 6 years that I was in the medical device industry, I made plans 6 years in a row. And like that had never happened in any other division, because usually if you make plan, they'll give you a more aggressive plan that
Oh, for sure.
probably won't hit. But I kept hitting it, and 6 years in a row hit plan, and then left. But yeah, I did it. The interesting thing too is that as the mastermind grew and the group coaching grew, I was scaling it at the time because I had to. Like,
Mm,
I had no choice but to scale it, because otherwise then my full-time job would take a hit. So I was literally
mm-hmm.
scaling a business because I was like, man, I don't have the bandwidth to possibly serve these guys. So I've got to bring in other people to help me. So, and I did that. And then I was also able to work my full-time job effectively, obviously, because of the numbers.
That's crazy. I remember when I was in device and I was number one in the company in 2012. And then I know exactly what you mean when they make sure you're not number one again,
Oh yeah.
because the scaling of the
Yeah.
quotas definitely takes a hit. But okay, well, cool. I'm glad we have that. I knew we had that commonality, but I wanted to ask you how you were doing both, and if you were doing both, and I don't know. Do you find that there was value in the quality of just being in the flow of the mission versus, like you said, I never thought it was going to be as significant as it is right now, and you never saw it being what it is right now? Like, do you think early on there's some value in sort of not being so micromanaging of that long-term vision?
Looking back, just quote Steve Jobs, you can't connect the dots by looking forward. You can only connect them by looking back. And to be honest, like, I think, you know, doing both roles at the time that I was doing both roles actually served me in both roles. And I'll give you an example. So if you really look at what Dad Edge is, it's personal development for husbands, fathers, and men, right? It helps us to become an overall better human being and to create better connections with people, better relationships with people, have conversational excellence. So the things that I was learning in Dad Edge from like all my podcast guests, I would absolutely use those things in my full-time job. One of the coaching certifications that I got was called Exchange, which is based on appreciative inquiry, which is basically facilitating um, highly engaged meetings. Like, normal meetings are like people who are like literally, they
Mm-hmm.
want to poke themselves in the eyeballs, and they're in a boardroom or they're in a conference room. They're being talked at. There's nothing collaborative about it. The exchange approach and that coaching approach is very different. It's actually like bringing all what we call crowdsourced wisdom. It's bringing
Yeah.
people into the mission, bringing the best ideas actually emerge. Like, your job as the facilitator and the coach is to actually create the environment where people want to bring the best ideas to the surface. They want to bring the best strategies, right? And quite frankly, the reason people don't do that is because they don't feel psychologically safe. I mean, how many times have you been in a meeting, a quarterly business review or a boardroom meeting, and people are like, does anybody have any questions or comments after they've been talked at for like 2 hours? And you just like,
They're just ready for it to be over. Yeah.
yeah, they're just ready to be over, or they're just like, I don't know what if I ask this question and they're going to be like, why
Mm-hmm.
are you even asking this question? Or what if this strategy I propose is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's looked at or laughed at or whatever, people don't feel. But if you know how to create that, like, so when COVID, here's a fascinating thing. When COVID hit, everything that we had to do went virtual.
Mm-hmm.
So my boss actually saw my skill in being able to create these highly engaged virtual meetings. He's like, dude, he goes, can you train our entire management team? There's 140 of them. Can you train all of our management team on how to run this? Because on Zoom calls and conference calls, everybody's checked out. Nobody wants to engage. All these reps are just like doing whatever they're doing. Like, can you help our managers basically rebuild how they do this? And I'm like, yeah. So I like literally held trainings on how to run a highly engaged conference call over Zoom where everyone felt a part of the team. There was higher morale, better ideas emerged, all these things. So that's a long way to say that, like, the things that I was learning within Dad Edge and even my coaching certifications was able to help me become a way more valuable employee at the time, which was really fascinating. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to probably pile onto that and co-sign what you just said, because in my sales job, I'm still in medical sales, but in any sales job, it's all about listening, obviously. Like that's a duh moment, even though some salespeople still don't get that. But I interviewing, obviously I'm supposed to be doing 20% of the talking and you're doing 80%. And that's really paralleled in sales. And I've found I get way more time with the customers. I get way more attention. I get them to elaborate a lot more whenever I'm literally empathy based listening, and they don't feel like they're being sold anything. And that, I mean, it's funny because I'm just listening to you and then I'm migrating conversation and transitioning and just asking the right questions. And that'll work anywhere. I mean, that'll work with your wife. And I know you've probably covered that in your communication. It was a great episode, by the way. I don't know if that was last week or the week before, but 10 ways to communicate better, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for convicting me. I'm sure I'm the only one that was convicted, but that was good content.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so the Dad Edge, I know used to be the Dad Project, I think originally in its inception, right? And so Dad Edge, give me an idea, give the listeners an idea what you think the edge really looks like. Like if someone says, I've got the edge, right? I've got that it factor, whatever you want it to be. Can you kind of nail that down into a couple things? I mean, it's a broad range, but what's the edge look like as a dad?
100%. So, you look at someone like a Marine, right? And you compare them to an everyday civilian. You mentioned, the term Marines, right? And last in
Yeah.
line. And Marines have a very distinct set of skills to make them, absolutely deadly in combat. They have an
Mm-hmm.
edge, right? They have an edge against when they're up against their enemies. The same, and they have an edge when compared to a regular run of the mill civilian, right? They know what to do, when to do it, and they don't rise to any occasion. They fall back on their training.
Mm-hmm.
The dad edge, and I would also say the man edge, the husband edge, whatever you want to call it, because that's we teach all three, is we align those skills and tactics with that. So, like for instance, if you want to better communicate, like I love helping men with marriage. It's one of my most favorite
Mm-hmm.
things to do. So when I ask men who come and do life with us, like so for instance, as you and I are talking, we're 2 weeks away from what we call class 5 of creating an extraordinary marriage. We have 21 guys who are going to do life with me over the next 14 weeks, and I'm going to teach them 10 skills around conversational excellence, communication, connection, and intimacy that they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Using empathy is one, right? Using labeling, mirroring, voice tone, generative questions, creating a
Mm-hmm.
vision, the environment, psychological safety, core values, love languages, and another skill we call the cube. All of these things are so important that give a man an edge, and if they want to communicate with their wife. So, like for instance, that's a toolbox of 10 skills that I can use to basically go to what could be a triggered conversation and have conflict resolution. It'll help me be very clear with my communication. It'll help me become a radical master listener, empathetic listener. Not only am I going to be listening, but I'm going to let her know I'm listening. And there's ways we do that. That's the edge. When I ask men who don't know those skills, quote unquote, maybe they're not familiar with that edge, and I ask them, what do you want in your marriage right now? A lot of them will say, I want communication. And this is where I'll press. Well, if you want more communication, what do you mean by that? What do you want? I hear two words all the time. I want more, or I want better.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the edge. More and better is not the edge. That is like, I just don't want what I have right now. That's usually
Mm-hmm.
what they're saying. I
Mm-hmm.
want better, but I don't know what better looks like. So, like, for instance, I'll hear things like this. Well, if you had more time to talk to your wife, what would that accomplish? And then you'll start to see them start to think, and they're like, well, we would have more time to talk about more things. And I'm like, well, what more things do you want to talk about? You see, I really dig. And they're like, well, I want to, and this is where you really get to the beautiful heart of men. They're like, I want to talk about our goals and dreams. Like, I want to talk about like things that I do that make her feel loved. I want to tell her things that make me feel loved. Like
Yeah.
I want us to feel like we're kind of dating again. I want to ask her about like her dreams for the future and like our dreams for us and the things that we want for our kids. I want to be able to talk openly about our sex life, like all these things that are intimate things. And I was like, if that's what you want, then you have to learn the skill of creating an environment of psychological safety where the other person feels 100% free to share those things with you without judgment, without pain, blame, or
Mm-hmm.
guilt. You also have to create the physical environment for a conversation like that to flourish. You have to be an empathetic listener. You have to listen for emotion and then label that emotion. You have to be really good at generative questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You also have to be really good at not using the word why and instead say, hey, tell me more about that. The word why is accusatory subconsciously. Tell me more is an invite. It's these little tiny tweaks in everyday communication that literally make all the difference in the world. And that, my friend, is the edge. And what
Mm-hmm.
most people don't do or they don't understand is like, hey, I'm going to go into war and I'm going to be a Marine, but I'm not doing any type of basic training. I'm just going to go in and hope it works out. And that's the way we go about our marriages, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
because quite frankly, we haven't been taught not to do that. Instead,
Yeah.
the Marine says, oh, no, no, I'm going to basic training. I'm going to learn all these skills. I'm going to become dangerous. And then I'm going to have the edge to protect myself, to defend my country, to defend my brothers against that enemy. And I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And this is no different.
Yeah. And to add to that, I mean, those are gold. And to add to that though, you can't just hear it once and then expect to execute. I mean, it's got to be like practiced, right?
Yeah.
And you probably, the expectation of yourself in that moment needs to be set realistically to, okay, I'm probably not going to be perfect right away. Because let's face it, I
Oh,
built
yeah.
the bad habits over years. I'm not going to build the good ones not today. So, right expectations and then just right reps, I would say, of doing the right thing and applying what you're teaching has got to go a long way. It's got to be kind of expected on the front end.
Can I speak to that whole perfection thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you even meant to do it like as that's a
Mm-hmm.
goal, right? But I think
Mm-hmm.
I think what you just said is in the mind and heart of most men.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got to be perfect. It's got to be flawless. Oh no, it absolutely does not. It's got
Mm-hmm.
to be progress. It's got to be a little bit better than what you were yesterday. I'll give you an example. I this was on Instagram. It literally just happened yesterday. Um, it was a short reel on how to use tactical empathy using emotional labels when I was on John um oh my God, The Punisher. Holy crap. I'm
I've
having
seen I saw it and I can't remember the guy's name.
oh my
He
gosh.
was he was new to me, but
The real ones. Like anyway, John had me on his podcast and I there's a short reel of like, hey, if you really want to let your wife know that you're hearing her and you want to become a really good listener, don't just listen for words, because most men are like, well, if I hang on every word, that'll be good. But what you're doing is you're hanging on words. You're not listening for what we call the emotion, right? The emotion is actually what connects us as human beings. So if I can see my wife and hear my wife and, understand what it is that she's feeling, I become a much better listener and I become much more engaged in the conversation and she feels much more connected to me. So I that was a short reel on that. But what a comment in the comment section was like, bro, that doesn't work 100% of the time. And I'm like, and I normally don't comment back on people like that. And I'm like, what does work 100% of the time? I was
yeah,
like,
and
last time
define
I saw,
work too.
right,
That's the other thing. Define what is working.
right.
Like what is that? Yeah.
It's supposed to be majority, right? It's supposed to be that it works it works better than what you're doing today. So like, for instance, I said, yeah, I don't know a batter who's ever hit 1,000. I was like, but I know really good batters who hit 300.
Yeah.
Jordan only made, I think it was 48% of the shots that he took, which means he missed over half of the shots that he took. There is no perfection, but there is the practice, right? There's the tactic. There is like, hey, I'm going to shoot this way. I know how to release the ball. I know how to jump. I know what I'm looking at. That doesn't guarantee it's going to go in the hoop, but it does guarantee it's got a much better chance of going in the hoop if I follow the tactics and the skill and quote unquote the edge of doing that shot. It increases the odds, but nothing's going to be bulletproof.
Yeah. I mean, mechanics, you got to work on mechanics, and then eventually those position you for success. And, if to the person who said it doesn't work, I mean, to me, a work might be different than it is for you working. Like me getting through a conversation without a fight with my wife, that may be a win. Okay. So whatever I did worked. To you, it might be, hey, we finally became intimate after a conversation. That's a win. That means it worked, whatever I'm doing. Yeah. So yeah, that doesn't work 100% of the time. I think could be real relative. Well, okay. So in my opinion, you can't have too much of a good thing. So the message that you have over and over and over still is resonating, still is effective. Have you ever come across like this feeling of, man, I feel like I'm saying the same. I feel like a broken record. What prevents you from getting stagnant in your mission or the movement or the message? Like, is there any maybe defense against that you have tactically, or is it there's no real danger of that because what you're doing is working, what you're doing is needed, and it's good information? Like, is there ever any risk in it sort of becoming redundant or stagnant?
I think that there's always a risk. I mean, I'm a realist when it comes to that, but I also know that it's the simplest things that work, right? So like, I always like to compare things to sports, right? If you have, if a batter gets up to the plate and he has a diehard routine to get his mind and his body in the zone to make sure that he is fully present and engaged and while he's getting ready to swing that bat, and you see it all the time. Different batters will come up, they'll do their routine, swing the bat twice, they'll kind of like look over, they'll kind of shake their head or do whatever, right, that they do to gear up for that. But what I think is most important is that you've got to simplify this. And that's one thing that we've done at Dad Edge, is that we've made these things very simple for you to implement and for them to do. Now, in my personal life, like, I'll share this with you, right? I believe in conversational excellence with your kids. And I'll use that one thing as an example. Conversational excellence creates connection to your kids. I'm sitting here, I have a 17 and 15-year-old, and they love being at home. They love hanging out with us. They love spending time with us. Like, everyone has always told me, and I encourage every person who's listening to this podcast, don't buy into the BS story when people tell you, oh, just wait till they're teenagers. They won't want anything to do with you. Agreed. They won't listen to you, right? If you do the right things, if you connect with them, if you get into their world, if you're genuinely interested in them, and you have these, you go to every conversation with curiosity and appreciation, even when it comes to life lessons and quote unquote lectures. I don't lecture. I ask my kids really good questions for them to come up with their own solutions, so I don't have to lecture. And usually, here's the funny thing, whatever it is my kid is going through that I feel the need to lecture, when I ask the right questions, the solution that they come up with is usually better than whatever lecture I was going to lay out for them that they were going to probably disengage in anyway. So I really
came up with it. That's even better.
Came up with it, right? Yeah. So, like, for instance, and I'll give a part of conversational excellence and the skill that we call generative questions is most people go, they ask their kids, how was school? How was your day? Do you have homework? Right? It's these default questions that really don't provide any connection whatsoever. But if you get into their world and you ask a curious question, a question that generates something that was a challenge or something that was really, really good that happened to them or something that they're excited about the next day. So I don't like asking. I ask my kids, what was the best part of your day? Now, does that question get old and stagnant? Yeah, it kind of does, right? Even my kids will be like, so you're going to ask me what the best part of my day is? I think you can vary up any tactic, because really what I'm looking for is, tell me something that you're grateful for today. Tell me something that was cool that happened today. And what I'll do is I'll simply reword that question. And I'll just simply say, tell me about a time today where you made somebody else laugh. Right? Now, for them, that's a high point moment because they made somebody laugh, right? Or tell me how you helped somebody today. Or tell me teach me something that you learned today that you think I might not know. Right. And it can be anything. And what I'm looking to do in that question is it's not so much the answer that comes back. It is the answer that comes back, but I want them to go on this conversational, emotional, connected journey with me is really what I want.
Yeah.
Because, and then when they're storytelling and I don't get a fine, good, busy, crazy, boring answer, which is, those are all one word answers, fine, good, crazy, school is boring.
Yeah.
I want a story, right? And when I ask my kids, like, hey man, tell me how you help somebody today. And they'll kind of like think, what I want them to do is think, because they're searching and they're thinking. And they're like, actually, so there's this kid named Kane, a true story. This kid named Kane in summer camp. He couldn't score a goal in our soccer game to save his life, but I noticed that he was kicking the ball with his toe. And what I helped him. I went up to him and I told him how to like just hold his foot to the side just a little bit to kick it. And he didn't make a goal, but he kicked the ball way more accurate. And I thought I was really helpful. And then that's when you can be like, dude, that's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
how, and then I just get more curious. How did that feel to help somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And then like, oh, it felt really, really good. Well, how do you think Kane felt after you helped him? That connecting those dots for them,
Mm-hmm.
and only by asking questions, like that's how you provide like these really fruitful connections and conversations. And that's how you can get sort of out of the stagnation.
Yeah.
Every question and every story will build on another question and another evolution into that conversation.
Right.
So yeah, you can use the same questions and they get stagnant, but I just encourage guys, vary them up, get creative, even get
Yeah.
humorous with it, right?
Well, and your guys, I'm sure, I mean, guys are always hungry for something that gives them, like we talked about earlier, the edge, and guys are consistently looking for ways to be better. I mean, that's just how we are. I don't know if it's an inner competition with ourselves, or maybe just this kind of defense mechanism against the culture that we're trying to resist right now because it's super super evil and coming for our kids. So we got to, as dads, we got to be kind of on that front edge of our seat and be proactive. Well, I was going to do something different in the beginning, but we got traction really quick. And so I'm going to fold this in the middle, and do sort of a hypothetical. I'm going to have you finish the sentence for me. Okay. We're
Sure.
going to have this kind of a virtual coffee shop that you're sitting around talking to your 3 or 4 closest friends. As a man, I could be more intentional in the area of.
As a man, I could be more. So this is for me, or I'm advising people.
Yeah, it's you. You're
For
saying
me.
these words. Yeah.
So as a man, I could be, and I'm getting better at
More
this,
intentional at, yeah.
more intentional at uh, listening to God and not talking so much. Like, so when I did this morning, I do the same routine every single morning on my way to the gym. I pop open the Hallow app and I listen to the gospel. I love
Mm-hmm.
listening to Jonathan Romy. And then, it's like he guides you through this 10-minute thing. And it's like, what do you want to say to God? And then today I was like, let me just listen. So I think and some really, really cool things came back from
Mm-hmm.
just that listening. So I could be more intentional about not doing so much talking, but doing more listening when I'm in my prayer time.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Be nice for me to know what's God and what's my own agenda too.
Yeah.
Having discernment. All right. How about this? This is you here. The 3 keys to connecting with my wife are.
Mm. This is fresh off of a date
This is
night
right
last
out of
night.
your okay. This is right out of your book, or out of your last episode or whatever, the 10 communication. But go ahead. 3
No,
keys.
this is even fresher than that.
Cool.
So my wife and I've been working with a coach for the past 3 months, and we just culminated today. So we just went on. I just graduated from his program today, and the last thing that I had to do was sit down with my wife, and she had to list the things that make her feel most loved and the things that make her feel most unloved, and then I had to do the same back to her. So, like for instance, I'll give you 5. The things that make my wife feel most loved are when I'm aware. And I asked her what that was about. She said, when you're aware of the surroundings, you make a mention of the things that I do, even the little things like going to the grocery store or cleaning up the living room, or seeing how I redecorated a room or decluttered something. Also, when you kiss me on the forehead, that shows that it's just such a sign of love with no agenda. When I'm heard, when I know that you're listening and you're not in your phone, you reflect back to me like some of the things that you might have heard. So when I'm heard, very specific compliments, not necessarily like how great I look, how my ass looks in jeans, but how does my hair look healthy? Do my eyes look bright? Things like that. And then the other thing too is when I full force take all 4 boys and we go do something, we just give mom a little bit of space. So that's literally fresh off of that's
Nice.
12 hours old.
Nice. I mean, doing what you do kind of holds yourself accountable. I mean, you sort of have to walk the walk, right? You can't just have a bunch of masterminds and books and content on podcasts. You got to actually walk in those shoes, don't you?
You do. You 100% do. And then when dark times happen, because I'm not immune to them, you feel like the biggest imposter on the planet, right? But we all do. You know, it's how quickly can we become aware, and how quickly can we pivot? Because what a lot of human beings do is we simply just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, expecting something different. And this is why I steer clear of perfection, because quite frankly, if that's your measure, you're never going to hit it and you're going to give up. So you might as well look at progress. Am I better than I was yesterday? One other thing I'll share with you too, I just took my whole family. This was on Monday. Took them through a process where they had to rate me on 10 different things. And it was a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being you never do that, 5 being you always do that, and everything in between. And I got to hear some things I was doing really good, and some opportunities that really shined a light on some things that I could be better at. And but I think it's sidestepping the ego and understanding of like, okay, great. The things that are going great, I'm going to double down and do those more. The things that are an opportunity, I need to not just I can't stand this. I need to be better about that. So like, for instance, there were 2 things that came back that I have opportunities for. One is being calm under serious duress, like where the kids are going crazy and there's lots of stress in the organization, or there's something like I could be, my kids told me, they're like, you're not necessarily like outspoken, like impatient, but it's this vibe. It's this very distant, sort of cold kind of vibe. And you're short and you're curt with your words. Like we just kind of get this feeling like, don't mess with them. And we don't like that feeling. And I don't like to give off that feeling. The other thing too is, and so if I could be like, well, I need to be better about that. Well, a way that I could be better about that, and I just posted this on Monday, is I'm now taking 5 minutes before I close my work day, go from work dad to family dad. And I literally write down just 1 page. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes. What am I specifically going to do tonight to be the best possible person I can be? And I do it tactically. When people look at me, I'm going to look at them in the eyes. Despite the stress I feel, I'm going to try to spread joy. And if I do feel stress, I'm going to share what's going on, not keep it inside, so they at least know what's going on. Because people, when we just simply share like, hey, I had a really bad day today, and it's hard. I'm carrying a lot right now.
Yeah.
When we just simply even share something like that from a tactical standpoint, like the edge standpoint, right? It at least gives our kids to be like, oh, so it's not me. I didn't do anything wrong. So, okay, great. At least you're aware of that. And there's something to be said too about someone who's self-aware. There's a reason why Michael Scott is so annoying in the office. There's a reason why Michael Scott, no one on his team trusts him, is because he is the most unaware person of himself. But even if we're having a bad moment and we're aware enough to communicate why and how, that's going a lot further than, I don't know, I'm fine, just bad day.
Right.
Right.
Gentlemen, let me take a step away from the conversation real quick to let you know of a new resource I have just published. The link will be in the show notes to purchase it. But if you've ever felt like you didn't quite understand the spiritual battle and the supernatural realm that we fight in daily, the Bible talks about powers of darkness, demonic forces, evil and good, darkness and light. We are at war spiritually. If you haven't ever quite fully comprehended that or understood how to approach that battle and tactically, strategically engage in that war, I've created a simple handbook, guidebook, roadmap that is straightforward, simple, short, but it's extremely useful and might serve you in this battle of spiritual warfare. It's called Operation 333, the Little Black Book on Strategic Spiritual Warfare. Grab a copy today, share it with somebody that you know that is, maybe you can do a Bible study together with it. Maybe it can be a resource for small groups. Give it to somebody. They're priced very competitively. You should be able to buy a handful of those and then give them away to your friends. I might actually have a drawing for those that email me. I can draw your name and send you a free copy. But email me at lastinlineleadership@gmail.com. I hope it serves you. Let's get back to the conversation with our great guest here at Last in Line Podcast. Yeah, no, that's good. Because we'll add that to your list of things that you do well. Because you read my mind. I was about to say, inviting them into your world, there's value, because then there's context to this whole, I'm just kind of grumpy, or give me 5 minutes, or, you're like, that's super vague. I mean, give me some context. So it's good to sort of let them know. And it's not like you have to be that transparent every single minute of every day. Hey guys, the wind blew out of the north today. I'm not feeling it. Leave me alone. That kind of stupid. But I get your point, because that's exactly where I was going to go next. But that's good, man. All right. How about this? We'll get a little spiritual here for you. Since you brought up God, you're right in the right place. How about this one? You're going to finish this sentence. God is working on me most in the area of
leadership.
Leadership, really? Considering that you've been doing leadership pretty at a high level for a while, how is that? What's the next level?
So I am now officially the CEO of Dad Edge. Like, that's like I'm officially that. Like, if you really looked at what I was doing, I was more the operations, right? I was in the weeds of our organization. I was in all the things, and the reason, I mentioned I've been working with a coach for the past 90 days is because I saw a real gap in the next level of leadership that I really needed. If you look at like my stint in medical device sales, I was a regional manager. I was also a national sales director, but it's a little different. It's different, but similar. When you are working for a company, you have reps, and you pull levers, right? Or a lot of what it's like, hey, if you're not making your number, I got to put you on a plan, like that kind of thing. Like, that's not the culture that I want to create in Dad Edge, and I never will. Instead, I had to really step into the visionary role, right? And that's what a CEO is. He's the visionary. I now have a COO who is our integrator. We have an executive assistant. She's been with me for almost 6 years now. So I really I've got that team. I have another team within our Dad Edge business boardroom mastermind. I have 3 other coaches there that I lead. And then we have 50 coaches that lead under the COO. So I really had to understand, like, okay, I now need to lead and empower and create and cast a vision and create a culture. And I've never been at the top of any company, but I am now. And now here's the feedback from my own team was, I need you to not do these. Like, my COO is like, that's operations. Why are you doing that? That's not your job. You need to be doing different things. And I was really scratching my head and being like, what am I supposed to do then? So I had to go learn. I had to go find out. And that's what God's really been working with me on, is like, okay, I'm going to put you in a different role now. And I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable role. I'm going to put you in a role you've never been in. And you're not going to be able to learn it all by yourself. So
yeah, I
had to learn.
That's crazy. I mean, there's an element of humility that comes along with that, but also, it seems like you would just there might even, I mean, obviously there's a new skill set because you've for so long you've had your hand in different things and it's kind of worked, and you've had the plate spinning, and now you're sort of overseeing and quarterbacking the ones holding the plates now. And so you're still accountable, obviously, but you're directing and you're casting vision more. And you're not hands off too. That's the other thing. People, I think, misconception with leadership is that they're just going to be like, wash my hands, arm's length, I'm hands off, and I'm just going to look over out, outside the booth over the field. And then when it's a grease fire, then I'll get involved. And that's people don't like that, because you're like, I built this. I don't want to be hands off. But there's an element to where you sort of have to, right? You got to get humble. You got to get trusting. There's trust is a big deal with the people that you brought on, but thankfully you've built that team. And so you've obviously trust those guys, but that's got to be a hard thing. How long have you been having to sort of roll with this adjustment?
So it's been about 9 months, but I would say I have fully stepped into it in the past 4 months, because we are really in this transitional phase with me getting out of my own way and getting out of the way of the people that do their job best. And what I've really have just understood is, like, my job is to create the culture and to create the vision of where we're going and how we're going to get there. And then I leave the integrator portion to the team. I leave like, hey, here's an idea, right? Here's what I think we can do. Can you help me put the pieces together, and then take those pieces and then put them into play? So I kind of like the sports reference with this, because I really viewed myself as more the quarterback when we first started. Like, okay, like I know the plays and tell the team what to do. Well, then I moved into, I think, what, the head coach role,
Yeah.
right? Where I'm now telling the quarterback what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But this new role is, I'm up in the press box now.
Yeah.
And I'm watching all the pieces happening now, not just like, hey, this is our next play, but like, let's look at everything that's going on. So it's a very different view from there.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like I've actually have had to eat more humble pie in this role than any other. Like my team has had to tell me, stop,
Yeah.
get out of my way. Like
Yeah.
you're actually slowing us down. It's really odd. Like when I first stepped into this role, I thought, like, in every meeting, like I had to be the one to get into the how and have all these new ideas. And I would get frustrated when my team was resistant to it. And I'm like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, this is what we're doing. And they're like, dude, when you do that, we've been working on this, and this over here, and we're just about done with it. And you come in and you just like unravel everything. Like, you can't do that. And what I really found is if you're the CEO, you need to do a whole lot less talking, whole lot more listening, create that culture where people can flourish. And then, I mean, granted, people need guidance, right? But once you start getting in the weeds and barking orders and taking power away from the people you're trying to empower, that's not going to be a good thing. It's a
No, and
really delicate dance.
yeah, you've had to, bite your tongue a lot. And it's good that you have people that are comfortable enough to be very authentic with you and open verbally with you to say, hey, chill. All right, we got this. You're really kind of being counterproductive here the more you get involved. I mean, it's nice to have that, because toxic culture would have backbiting, would people just kind of have the yes men walk away and then be unproductive or destructive to the organization and the vision. But your guys are at least open with you, and you're taking it, and that's good. You're taking it. And that part in that first 4 or 5 months, I'm sure, was an adjustment, and you probably wish you maybe could undo some things that you may have done, or maybe you would give yourself some advice on how to do that first 3 or 4 months differently. What would you say to somebody maybe that are going through that? Maybe somebody's having a little bit of a transition in that vein a little bit. And what would you say? Hey, if I could talk to Larry back, 9 months ago, I'd tell him this.
Talk less and listen more. Right. The other thing too is, it's not how, it's who. That was a big one for me. I'd get into the how and I'd overwhelm myself and I'd overwhelm my team. I'm not the how guy. I'm the what guy. I'm the where guy, not the how guy. And I'm okay with that. I don't want to be the how guy. The how guy is the integrator, right?
Yeah.
And the how guy is they put the pieces together. I do not want that role. I hate that role. So like, for instance, we just created a brand new program in the Alliance, which is that's our flagship program. So that is called the first 3 months a man enters the Alliance. We've called it the dojo. We call it the dojo for a few different reasons, but we call it the dojo because it's the first 3 months of a man's journey. And what we've done in that first 3 months is it's a die-hard curriculum that creates accountability. Most importantly, it creates connection. It's the same team. It's the same team captain. These guys meet with the same group. And it's an absolute incredible program. And it's an incredible kickstart for a man. And what we have found, so like we had this grand idea of like, hey, this is how we can do this first 3 months differently to really like get a man ready then for the Alliance, which is they then enter into what we call Alliance proper. But putting all those pieces together, it sounds super easy, super easy. But when you get into the how, you're like, wow, there's a lot of moving pieces here. There's a lot of communication here. There's a lot of things that need to happen, a lot of I's that need to be dotted, a lot of T's that need to be crossed. And I want to create the dojo and I want to create that culture and I want to create that connection with these guys, but I am not the one to dot the I's and cross the T's. That's somebody else's job that they're way better at it than I am. Yeah. So that's an example of we just went through this process.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess growing pains is a thing. Even though it may not be super painful, it's a growing adjustment and you got to account for different things to maybe increase in the capacity and bandwidth of the organization. You got to put on a few different hats. And it sounds like you're wearing the Miyagi hat if it's a dojo, I guess. But man, let's talk a little bit about fatherhood a little more, I guess we should say, because we did talk some about that. But what are you seeing maybe as a common thread that is the brokenness on an aggregate level with dads? Like where's the biggest vacancy, would you say, right now? Not guys in your group, because obviously those guys are sharpening their edge and getting better every day. But maybe when they come to you, or maybe things you're hearing from emails and DMs, what is sort of a common theme of the brokenness out there in dads?
There's a lot. That's a big question, and I'll probably try to dissect each one of these. So let's talk about the perception that men have, the perception of fatherhood and even marriage. John, I don't know. I don't even know where this came from. I don't know. But it's, if you really zoom out from this perception that I'm about ready to lay on you, it makes no sense whatsoever. But somehow, some way, we have all bought into it. If I'm going to go sell a medical device like you do and I did, then so like if I'm going to go sell heart valves, like I need training. Like I need to know the anatomy and physiology of the heart. Like I need to know what the atrium is, what the ventricles are, what the mitral valves are, all these things, right? I need to know what oxygenated blood is, and I can't remember what the other oxygenated what the other type of blood, but I need to know some basics on anatomy and physiology. I need to know exactly what does the device that I sell, what problem does it solve? I need to know how to guide a surgeon, how to put this thing in, right? And I need to give him all the side effects. I need to give him all the pros, all the cons. I need to help him make a decision of, is this right for this patient? Now, I need to be trained on that. So you go work for Medtronic or Cardinal Health or whatever else, it doesn't matter. They are going to put you through a rigorous, 90-day, 15-week training, right? And you even got to go through aseptic delivery, which is sterile delivery of surgical devices before you can even step into an OR. Yeah. So so we fully expect that. They're like, okay, I just got my job at Medtronic. Okay, I'm going to go through 4 months of training. Okay, I can't do really anything until I've graduated this training, and then I can go in the operating room, and then I'm somewhat dangerous. Right. But over time, to keep your job, I don't know about the company you work for, but we were required to have continuing education. We had to go get certified and recertified and things. When it comes to marriage and fatherhood, our perception is I should know how to do this automatically with no help, with no development, with no skills. And if I have to ask for help, I'm broken. I'm not a man. If my wife and I have to go to couples therapy, something's wrong with us. We're headed for disaster. Dude, if I could literally shake a man by the shoulders and
Mm-hmm.
just say, that is the complete opposite of this whole thing. You
Right.
actually have to take the same approach to this whole thing of like, I don't know what I don't know. But I need to go learn. I'm not saying you got to go get certified in marriage, but
Yeah.
if you are not continually learning how to connect, communicate, love, support, all these other things that is so important to us as fathers, you are missing the boat big time if you are not learning. It is this,
Mm-hmm.
the concepts are the same. So that the perception is one. So change your perception to like, you know what, I need to learn some things in order to be effective. So that's one. Number two is most men just we lone wolf everything.
Right.
I put a video out about like this lone wolf syndrome, and man, I saw some of the YouTube comments on this of like, how this really hits for men. We are physically surrounded by people, but when it comes to this iron sharpens iron mentality, we go at life alone. And for some crazy reason, we think that that's a good thing. But human beings are tribal beings. We are
Mm-hmm.
community creatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest misses that we could do is like, listen, there's somebody who's ahead of me in where I want to go. They've already paved the way of success, right? A Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm about ready to sign up for Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The instructor, they actually call them a professor. The professor and the other students who are ahead of me have already paved the way for my success. Why would I go try to learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu all on my own when I can sign up for this school, roll with other students who are going to make me better, work with an instructor who knows what he's doing versus trying to figure it out? But you do that in community. You don't do that on your own. So that's
Let me
community.
let me add something there if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I wonder if guys think that, like, back to the perception thing, of course, but it's all about what we think others are perceiving about us. Because I mean, it's obvious if I'm gonna go hunt and I've never hunted before. I mean, it's obvious I need gun training, safety training. It's obvious I need to know how to load a gun. Like, everybody thinks that's obvious. But I think as guys, we think the world already expects, like, when we have a kid or we put a ring on our finger, then it's just the world just kind of thinks you're good. Like, you should know. Like, but you don't have any problem when you're going to sign up for jujitsu, asking for a coach, asking for training. Let me watch this, and before I do it, somebody tell me the pitfall. Like, we don't have a problem when it's something we think people perceive us to not know how to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't. You walk in the dojo for the first time, everybody's going to go, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Of
So then
course.
you're okay with going, somebody help me.
Yeah.
But when you get married and have kids, you think people are looking at you like, okay, dude, you did it. You must know what you're doing. Go figure it out. I mean, that's the furthest thing from the truth.
I agree. What do you see my hat?
Yeah.
Wildcat Ranch. Wildcat Creek Ranch is what it is. This hat is a hunting hat. Now, here's what I'll tell. This goes right along with your story. I've always told my boys I was basically raised without a father. When it comes to the outdoors, like, I know how to camp and I know how to fish. I don't know how to do outdoors any more than that. I don't know how to hunt. I've never hunted in my
Right.
life.
Same.
I've always made my boys this promise. There's a really good chance I won't be able to teach you everything that you want to learn. But here's what I promise you. If you want to learn something, I will go learn it with you. And I think
Mm,
listen, if you're humble like that in front of your kids, like, I think another perception as a father that I think is off is I got to know it all. I don't
sure.
think that that's the case. I think you can actually teach humility and coachability by being like, I don't know, let's go figure it out. Never too old to learn. Let's go. My
Yeah.
kids are always eager to learn, which is great. But I think it's probably because they've seen their old man go through that. So last March, I've never hunted in my life. My 15-year-old Mason, he wanted to go hunting. I'm like, I've never hunted. I was like, oh, let's go learn together. I was like, I'll find a place that basically all we have to do is show up and they'll take us through everything. And we
Yeah.
did. We found a place in Texas, Wildcat Creek Ranch, and we showed up, and it was probably one of the most amazing experiences we've ever shared in, because we were both brand new to it. I showed up, he showed up. They trained us on the firearms. They took us out. We got 3 pheasant, 19 quail, and we had a guide every step of the way. And it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. And you know why? Because I didn't have to know all the answers. I didn't feel the pressure of like, I got to teach this kid. The only thing I did was like, hey, let's go learn together.
And
Let's go
did
do
that
it together.
diminish the experience? Not at all, right?
It
The fact
enhanced
that you
it.
needed help. Right. There you go.
It put us on the same. Now there are some things like fishing that I feel really good. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, here's how you tie a hook on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is the bait we use for this and that. But dude, there's nothing cooler than going to learn something with your kid that you've never learned before, because it puts your kid views you as
Mm-hmm.
like, like, hey man, we're going through this together for the first
Mm-hmm.
time. Like, how cool is that? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good, man. That's so cool. I'm the same, man. I don't hunt. Got firearms, but we don't hunt. We don't have hunting firearms. But yeah, I'm with you. I've never had a kid really express to me that he wanted to do that, but fishing's always been a thing. And so yeah, I could be a little bit more, I guess, diverse in my outdoor skills in certain things. But no, that's a good point. Where in Texas was that?
It was in Detroit, Texas. And so it's about 2 hours northeast of Dallas.
Northeast of Dallas. Okay. I was
Yeah.
going to think it was more like west. Okay. All right. Well, I'm in Houston, so the next time I'm holding you to this, next time you're anywhere down in South Texas, you gotta let me know.
I
Um,
will.
yeah. So, all right, we may have to do this again sometime because, man, I've got a lot of stuff and we've talked about a lot of good stuff. So, I want to be respectful of your time, but, um, I do want to know. I'm interested to know how you're going about these conversations with your kids because you're very communicative with your family and you're very open. You get them talking. It's not didactic. We're getting dialogue. It's two-way. What conversations are you having with your kids, especially the older ones, about the woke culture that we're in and some of the messiness and some of the wrecked complexion that we're seeing when it comes to faith, gender, when it comes to race. I mean, any of the woke umbrella stuff. Are you having any of those conversations? Are they curious? Are you curious whether or not they're curious? Like, how does that go with you guys?
Yeah. So, this is not usually something I talk about too terribly publicly, but I'm definitely open to opening it up. So here is what I see going on in the world right now. We're living in probably one of the most dangerous times I think we've ever lived in. I just had Sean Patrick Flannery on the podcast, who just played in the movie
Yep.
Nefarious, which I love that movie. I thought he did a bang up job. But here's what I'll tell you. We are in a society right now. We're in a world right now where good looks like evil and evil looks like good. And we don't know the difference. That's terrifying.
Yep.
Right. And I honestly think, like, so for instance, from a political arena, right? I'll just be fully blunt. I don't agree with the person who's running the country right now. I think he's a crooked dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my own opinion on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also say this, the whole, LGBTQ, I don't even know if I'm saying the acronym
It's a
right.
lot of
Uh,
letters. Yeah.
right. This whole thing of pronouns, and, you know, we now have to, um, we now have to buy into, like, so for instance, there's a kid that my kid goes to school with who thinks he's a cat, and
Yep.
he wants to be addressed as a freaking cat.
Yep.
And I'm like, when I went to school, when you and I went to school, that would never fly. You're not a cat. You're a human being. You're a boy, period. That's the way God made you. And
Yeah.
I honestly think all the spiritual warfare, I don't think this is a human thing that's going on. I think it's spiritual warfare is what I really think is
Agreed.
going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much confusion that's being created right now that if you're against that, you're evil.
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you look at what's even going on in schools and what these kids are subjected to,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's and they think that they're doing, like, I'll give you an example. And again, this is my own opinion, probably super controversial. I think it's wrong. I think it's irresponsible. I think you really need to look in the mirror as a parent if you're allowing your 7-year-old to choose whether they're a boy or a girl. And let me explain that. If the message in society and the message in school is, if you're let's just take a boy. If you are not interested in a girl, or if you don't find girls, like, if you're not, if you don't like girls, right? Then you could be a girl, or you could be gay. Dude, what 7-year-old boy doesn't think girls are disgusting? Like, I
Right.
mean, I'm not saying all of them, but
Annoying.
we all
Yeah,
remember.
they're annoying.
Well, yeah, they're
Yes,
annoying. Don't touch
of
them. They're
course.
gross, right? Ew, right? My kid's 7. I'm like, we joked. I was like, yeah, any girlfriends? He's like, ew, gross. No, girlfriends, no.
Exactly.
But the confusion that you might mess with someone who's got that mentality is like, well, if I think girls are gross, does that mean something's wrong with me? Because the rest of the world is telling me that might be a problem, and maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
this. So I think you need to look at a kid's development and their brain development of, like, if they're uncertain about, that it's uncertain, meaning like they're a boy.
Yeah.
If they think girls are gross, that's probably normal to
Yep.
some degree. And that doesn't mean that they're a different gender or they identify as something different.
Yep.
I think it's really irresponsible for kids to be subjected to that. Now, here's what I'll say also. Am I against gay people? No. I I don't care if you're gay. If you're gay,
No.
I am not against you, and I'm not racist. I'm not, like, I have friends of mine who are gay. I don't I could give a shit if they're
Yeah. I
gay.
don't think
Like,
anybody is
I just care
actually
about,
saying that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I just, are you a decent human being, right?
Yeah.
Here's where I have a problem is when you force your agenda on a kid that can't make that
That's right.
decision. That's where I have a problem,
That's right.
right? Because kids can't make up their own mind. That's the rub I
To
have
me,
with that.
that's
So these
I
are,
mean, you use some words to describe it. I would say it's abuse ultimately when you're
I
indoctrinating
agree.
elementary school kids with literature in the libraries talking about graphically sexual things. I don't even care if they're homosexual or not. I don't think that elementary school kids don't need to be reading about sex. So
100%.
it's crazy. But yeah, I wondered if you ever, because you are so kind of locked into, being a dad who communicates, I wonder, because there's probably a lot of dads that shy away from those conversations. There's some dads whose teenagers are in that environment and they don't know where to begin on how to direct them. So obviously you and I would agree that we stand on what the word of God says and we stand on biblical truth, and that's the capital T truth. But I wondered if you've ever had those conversations with your
Yeah.
teenagers and are like, man, this is what we stand on. This is what we believe, and that's against it. So we're not in favor of that, but we're not saying go pick every fight that you see in the hallway either.
No. So, we have open conversations about it, to answer your question. Yes.
Yeah.
We all agree that there's a spiritual battle going on.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing too, though, is I get really curious with my kids. Like, I don't preach to my kids of,
Yeah.
like, you need to think this way, right? Instead, I ask them questions to understand, how are you viewing it? What is this doing to you? Is this creating any confusion for you? Like, tell me what's going on in your mind and your heart as you're kind of exposed to this kind of stuff. So that way they at least have an outlet or a guide or someone they can confide in, that they can talk about this stuff. And here's what I'll tell you. My boys are not on board with this.
Yeah.
Like, and it has very little to do with, like, you shouldn't be on board with this from me. It has everything to do with, like, this is not what I believe. Like, and they're very honest and open about why.
That's good. No, that's good. Again, the more questions we can ask to sort of see where they are and meet them right there in that conversation is the way to go. Well, hey, this is good, man. I have one question more. But before I go into it, I want maybe have you tell us when you think maybe we can get our hands on the new book. And because the question I have at the end is worth ending on. So that's why I'm doing this now. And then the event you have coming up, I wonder if that's even still open for people to get involved and sign up or not. But talk about some of the stuff you got coming out.
Yeah, so we have the book. I have the book, The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood, coming out, and it should be released. I mean, I would say probably before the end of the year. It was supposed to be released last year, but my publisher that was going to publish it went bankrupt and really created a massive delay. But the book is completely done, has been done for over a year. So I would say sometime before the end of the year. The event that you're talking about is the 5th annual. It should be the 5th annual. It's the 4th annual Dad Edge Summit. That's because of COVID. We had to skip that year. This year I'm really excited about it. I think we only have about 30 tickets left. And but yeah, go onto the website, thedadedge.com/summit 2023. But I'm really, really excited about this year because we've always done a really great job, and we've seen our feedback of men leave that event, feeling 10x how they entered, as far as like the arsenal of tools that they have. And we went through a few of them today, but we teach these things at this event. Leadership skills, communication skills, marital skills, parenting skills. But this year we're going to be teaching all that and different things that we have in the past, but there's going to be one thing that's different this year. Every single man is going to be leaving with an incredible artifact in their hand. And it's called the Legacy Letter. I'm really excited about one of our keynote speakers, Blake Brewer, who is also on the Today Show. He is the founder of the Legacy Letter. The Legacy Letter, I don't want to spoil it because he's going to take us through a two-hour workshop on writing this letter, and every man in the seat is going to write the letter while he's there through this guided process. But every man is going to leave with this letter in hand for what he stands for as a man, as a husband, as a father, what his family stands for. This letter will be passed down to his kids, and that letter will be passed down to his grandkids. This will be a generational impact on paper that men will be able to pass down for generations to come, just like a family heirloom. So, we've always been able to have our guys leave with things that I would say are less tangible, right? Because they're more skills that we can use to connect conversationally and lead and that kind of thing. But this is actually something like in hand that they'll leave with.
Whoa. I mean, that's heavy. And that's cool. I've thought a lot about stuff like that. I've actually thought about even just doing a podcast that may live forever that is a verbal letter like that to my grandkids, to my kids, and just having that episode out there for 4 or 5 generations to be able to, assuming technology stays consistent.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. I just wanted to ask this at the end. So I know you went through the Project Timothy a couple years ago, maybe, or it was a 2-year project. Maybe you just last year finished it. So I know you did it, I think, with one of your sons. Am I correct in that? So, or you did it with a guy and then you did it with a son. I can't remember. Am I right?
That's correct.
Close?
Yes.
Okay.
It's called Operation Timothy.
Operation Timothy. Okay. All that to say, man, okay, once your family, and I don't know the exact day that you guys decided, okay, this is what we're going to believe and stand on, and this is how we're going to live. But what impact has you becoming stronger in your faith had with the type of dad you are, the type of husband you are, the business you're running, how it's grown so exponentially? Like what can you say about the faith journey and all of the fruit and all of the byproducts that come from strengthening that walk?
Such an incredible question. I would say that it's made understanding scripture less overwhelming. I would say that's the easy button, right? And how to incorporate and how to understand how does scripture really impact, my life, right? And how do I give it also, and how do I live it in a way? And my perception before all this was like, well, man, I got to be pretty much perfect in order to even be like a follower or faith. And if I'm not, then I'm just I'm just an imposter, right? I'm just a guy showing up in the seats on Sunday. And that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the whole evolution, there's been several different things that have happened. Going through Operation Timothy helped me deepen a relationship with God and understand what type of God we have, right? Understand scripture and the importance of getting into scripture every single day. But what really sealed the deal for me is when I watched The Chosen.
Mm.
That, above all, that series, if any of your listeners haven't watched that, it's worth a watch. No matter where you're at in your faith journey, it's really worth a watch because it's so well done. Dallas Jenkins does such a good job, and Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus, does a great job. But I didn't know much about the apostles, and this is what I'll share with you. And I didn't know that I couldn't really understand how the type of person that Jesus was until I saw that on screen. And so the interesting thing about Jesus is that he knew that there were people, like he kept saying in The Chosen, what I have to say will make sense to some, not to others. Right. And really understanding what his mission was, right. To give us an example of how to live our life. We're never going to live up to that example, but we can
Mm-hmm.
try. At least we have like, okay, now I know what good looks like, or what really good looks like. The other thing too is that he was here to, obviously, for all of us to be saved through him, but also to, take the Jews, the Gentiles, the Samaritans, all these people that were against each other, and say, we don't have to have a divide. We all
Mm.
answer to the same God, and he is this, this, and this, and, break these barriers down, which I think if you really look at what's going on in society, going back to our conversation 10 minutes ago, these
Mm-hmm.
barriers are getting bigger and thicker.
Mm-hmm.
And now evil looks like good and good looks like evil. But going back to that, I really actually relate to the apostles,
Mm-hmm.
like, John and Simon and Peter, I'm sorry, Andrew, and like all these, like, if you really look at the series, have you watched it?
Have not.
Okay. You got to watch it.
I don't know why.
The,
I really have
the,
no answer to that. Why I haven't watched it yet.
it's incredible. But if you really look at the apostles, like, I always thought I would read the Bible and the apostles, like they just were just these flawless human beings as well. And they knew what was going on. And they're just like, yep, we're good. The apostles were like, I don't really know what's going on. Do you? No, I don't really know either, but I'm going to continue to follow him because I really feel like he's right
God.
about a lot of things. Right.
He's God.
But
Yeah.
like they had no idea what was even coming next, but they knew that there was a mission and a purpose and reasons why they were doing it. And they were just obedient.
Mm.
And I think there's something to be said about, there's so many messages in that series. Like, so
Mm.
for instance, like I now have a different view of, and these are conversations I have with my kids, of when we go through challenges, crucibles, and even some suffering, it's really to make us stronger. And
Mm-hmm.
before, I'd be like, God, why the heck are you doing this to me? You must be really evil.
Mm.
It's actually not the case. It's kind of like a Navy SEAL going through buds. I'm putting you through this because it's going to make you a badass soldier,
Yeah.
right? It's to make you unfluffy.
Yeah.
And that's, God will test us, and that's okay. Um, the last and final thing I'll say is this. It's helped me become more gentle with my kids,
Mm.
because if you really watch Jonathan Romy and how he plays Jesus in that character, he's very graceful. Like, he's not judgy. Like, and I think a lot of people, they view faith and Christianity as, oh, it's judgy, it's guilt, it's all this.
Mm.
And Jesus gave a lot of people grace.
Mm-hmm.
He gave a lot of people leeway and forgiveness. And even when it made sense for him not to. So for me, it's allowed me to be a more compassionate father. It's allowed me to know that this one will make me kind of emotional as I think about it. The way I view my kids is a gift that God has bestowed upon me as their earthly father.
Mm-hmm.
I need to take really good care of that gift. And in times where I feel tested, the human being side of me, that's where I really need to dig in and be like, can you help me? Because you gave me these kids as a beautiful gift, and I don't want to mistreat this gift. I don't want to lead this gift on the wrong path. And I definitely can't do it by myself. So it's allowed me to be that medium between my boys and their heavenly Father, which I take as a great responsibility now.
Yeah.
Last and final thing I'll say is this: is my 9-year-old. He asked me a beautiful question a couple of weeks ago. He's like, "How do I pray?" So we went through the ACTS acronym. The ACTS, which is adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. And he's just able to follow. And you just saw the light bulb go off of like, oh my gosh, I can like follow that and like just have a conversation. I'm like, yeah, that's really it. And it's helped me when you see your little boy light up because he now knows how to pray.
That's
like,
crazy. That's
it's
amazing.
so cool. Yeah.
Wow. Dude. Wow. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because that's the way to end the podcast right there. I mean, I love the foundation you're laying, and it sounds like, because I remember last time we talked, one of your sons actually had you guys try a church, because you guys were considering different churches, and he was like, "Oh, I think we should." And then you guys tried it based on, so your kids are involved in
100%.
all the faith discussions too, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
So no, dude, I thank you for coming on. It's good. It's always good to talk to you. It's always good to watch your work, and man, the platform and the business organization is exploding and doing amazing stuff. And as always, we're grateful for you to be here. Audience, he has been Larry Hagner. We've been last in line. Be blessed.